morning, the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Board of Trustees is now convened in a committee of the whole meeting on Thursday, August 9th, 2018, in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District's Instructional Support Center located at 10300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas, at 6 p.m. for the purpose of reviewing that portion of Monday, August 13, 2018, school board agenda designated as action items, and to hear designated reports and recognitions posted in the meeting notice as required by Texas law. No action will be taken at this meeting. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees.
Sorry, Darcy. There's nothing to
Hang on, wait, hang on.
All right.
Hang on.
I'm very sorry, Dr. Ogletree.
That's cool.
This is the,
And at least it said sorry, you know. As the Cypress-Fairbanks Board of Trustees, we're here to set goals, listen to reports, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open for all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of the meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by sections 551.071 through 551.084 of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on CFTV, Channel 16, and CFTV online on the district website. They will also be rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 16 and available as video on demand on the website. For the tape to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. Thank you for taking time to join us this evening and for your interest in the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. I would also like to take this opportunity, to recognize, and I don't think we have any tonight, and I'm sure Monday night we will. All right, let's go to the report tonight, and the following items will be considered tonight. The administration will provide an oral report on the district's recommended safety and security action plan, and our presenters are Dr. Mark Henry and his entire committee, all 20 people.
Thank you, Dr. Ogletree, trustees. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to present something that we've had literally hundreds of people working on all summer, and that's the recommended safety and security action plan for Cyfair ISD for 2018-19. Again, like I said, there's literally been hundreds, if not thousands, of man hours that have gone into this plan. Just as a reminder, each and every day that Cyfair ISD is in session, we have in the neighborhood of 132,000 students and staff members that are in and around our buildings each of those days. If you wanted to compare that, it's not far behind Little Rock, Arkansas, or Shreveport, Louisiana, as far as the number of people that we engage with every day. And by the time you count parents, it exceeds those cities. So we're a very large city that functions every day, and we're responsible for the safety and security of all that come in contact with CFISD. We take safety here in Cypher ISD, security, very seriously. I go all the way back to, for me, I was a superintendent in 1999 when the Columbine tragedy happened, and I knew that day that schools were changed forever. And over the last 19 years, there has been a lot of change in safety and security, and you'll see some of the things that we've done just in the time that I've been here later on in this presentation. My own grandchildren go to Cypher ISD schools, so safety of our students, safety of our staff is extremely important to me and everyone that works in this district. Our plan, it's not static, it's fluid, it's a work in progress. We know as we go through 18-19, there will be some things that need to be tweaked. There'll be some things that might we see that are effective, that can be enhanced. We may see some things that are ineffective that we will quit doing. But especially with all of the new technologies that are going to be developed with the school shootings, we've already had several presentations on technologies that didn't even exist a couple of years ago. So we're going to work through those. We're going to find what works best for Cypher ISD and making sure that our students and our staff are safe. Dan Boggio, who is a founding partner and president of CEO of PBK, said the Texas School Safety and Security Council, an organization of Texas school police chiefs, has been examining best practices in existing school districts, and they have found Cypress-Fairbanks ISD to be the leading school district in Texas in the application of facility security measures. The TSSSC knows of no other district in Texas that employs the degree of safety components and administrative practices. So our approach, although we've invested a lot over the last few years, whether it's secure vestibules, whether it's police department, whether it's cameras, whether it's clear backpacks, whether it's ID and badges, whether it's mental health training, whether it's all of the different the training that we're going through the next few days, none of them are effective alone, and we know that. So we've kind of taken the approach, and if you can see on the slide, we've kind of taken the layering approach. If you held up a piece of Swiss cheese, there's holes in that Swiss cheese. But as you stack one slice on top of another, eventually you have a solid piece of cheese. And that's our approach in Cypher ISD. We know that one thing that we are going to do or we're going to try is not going to make our schools safe. But we think all of them combined will make our students and staff much safer. We've kind of taken the 3 or 4 pronged approach that we want to identify students, staff members, community members that may be struggling, but primarily students. We want to identify them early. We want to intervene before something does occur. So you're going to find out the changes that we're going to make to our counseling and mental health programs where we can identify and intervene in those situations early. Nearly every tragedy, and I've studied a lot on this summer, every tragedy that has occurred at a school, there have been telling factors long before the event occurred. So we want to make sure that we're on the cutting edge of that. But if someone does make it to a campus, again, we want to make our buildings tighter. We want to make them safer. We want to not only make the campus more secure, we want to make sure that the procedures that we have in place are followed. I told our leadership team 2 or 3 days ago, I said, we've got the procedures and policies in place, and we need to treat the 87th day of school like we do the first day of school. So every day we need to be vigilant in following our procedures throughout the district. And then finally, if something does happen on one of our campuses, if someone is able to encroach our campus, we want to be able to respond. we don't want it to be the first time that our staff and that our students have seen something like that. So we know that if we practice, if we have a response in place, we can limit the tragedy that might occur. So identify and intervene, prevent, and respond. And we're going to present that to you today and show you what we've done over the past few years and what we hope that not only you as a board, but we hope the community will support the efforts that we're making. I know not everything is popular, but we think combined together, we think it will make our staff and students safer. So Teresa Hull led our Safety and Security Committee this summer, so I'm going to turn it over to Teresa at this time.
Okay. Good evening. Before we discuss the details of our plan, I'd like to recognize the individuals who worked diligently over the course of this summer developing the plan we will share with you this evening. The committee included a team of experts, and here's our full committee, from a variety of areas. We had the police department represented, facilities and construction, student services, school administration, school services, communication, psychological services, and guidance and counseling. And I'd like to take an opportunity for the team to stand up just so we can recognize them. I'm not going to go through and introduce all of them, but I can't say enough about the work that this team did over the course of the summer. And they truly have an expertise in their various areas that contributed greatly to the development of this plan. So thank you, guys. As you may recall, in the aftermath of the school shooting in Florida, we shared with the board, parents, and community members the safety and security measures currently in place. Then the tragedy at Santa Fe occurred. Once again, we had to stop and evaluate our current safety and security measures and determine if enhancements or improvements were needed. In June, we convened the District Safety and Security Committee and developed a plan for moving through this process. The process began with 2 roundtable discussions, including the District Safety and Security Committee and campus principal representatives. The discussions focused on 4 different areas: facility improvements, behavioral or procedural improvements, mental health and counseling, and then training. The input and feedback from the roundtable discussions led to the development of a recommended plan. The plan was then shared with all of our campus principals, the state-mandated School Safety and Security Committee, which includes classroom teachers and parents, and also we shared it with the CLC for additional input and feedback. As you may be aware, Governor Abbott's office released a school and firearm safety action plan on May 30th. The plan included over 20 recommendations that outlined immediate action that could be taken by school districts and the state prior to the start of the school year, as well as legislative proposals that could be considered in upcoming legislative sessions. In an effort to evaluate our recommended plan, we compared our plan to the governor's action plan, and it was absolutely a great exercise. I will not go into all of the details of the recommendations, but I have provided you with a copy of the detailed comparison of the governor's plan to the CFISD plan. That is the stapled Word document that you have there, where we outline the individual recommendations that were applicable to school districts. There were many others in the document, but these were the ones that absolutely applied to school districts. So I've shared that along with the action taken by CFISD. Out of the 20-plus recommendations outlined in the governor's plan, the committee had either addressed that area or had developed a plan for addressing for the 2018 school year. So that is a great resource for you for more detail. The plan we will now share with you will be divided into 5 areas. We will first begin with the safety and security measures divided into 3 areas, as Dr. Henry mentioned: prevention, identification and intervention, and response. Mr. Snow will then provide information on the fiscal impact of all safety and security measures, and then Ms. Francis will conclude with our plan for communicating our efforts with the parents and community. At the conclusion of our presentation, we'll welcome your questions and any other input or feedback that you would like to provide. So we're going to begin with the prevention section, and I'm going to turn it over to Chief Mendez.
Good afternoon, good evening. Just to start with the prevention side, as you all are aware, Cypress ISD Police Department is a part of the district. We currently have right at 102 officers on our way to 108 officers for this school year. You can look at the slide and see that back in 2011, when the department first started, they had 19 officers. By the time I got here in 2017, we were at 86, and we have been steadily filling the positions. 2 officers at every high school, 1 officer at every middle school. When our patrol divisions are finally rounded out at 108 total for the district, we will have approximately 1 officer for every 3 elementaries, and at the maximum and at the minimum, 1 officer for every 6 elementaries. So we would greatly increase our response time to the elementaries. If you remember the safety presentation we did earlier in the year, our average response time for emergencies was 3.72 minutes, and so we hope to increase our response time with the number of officers we have. We're adding 2 canine officers. We're adding 3 canine officers this school year. 2 of the canines will be here August 20th, and we'll begin working with the 3rd canine coming on board in October. The 3rd canine will be a dual narcotics and nitrate canine, which will have the ability to find firearms and ammunition if a student were to bring that to school. So, and then we're also adding 2 mental health officers. Those 2 mental health officers will work in conjunction with Tracy Schluter and Franklin Sampson's group, and they'll talk more about the mental health component, but that's where we're at for the law enforcement presence.
If you recall, in our 2014 bond program, we included about $55.4 million of improvements to our facilities to address safety and security concerns that we've been looking at over several years. I'm happy to report that we've made significant progress in putting a lot of those security measures in place. And just to review with you, we're installing security vestibules at all our campuses at the front entries. It includes bullet-resistant glass, and it also contains video cameras as well as buzzers at the front door. We're also installing additional security cameras at all our facilities. We're adding 10 additional cameras at our elementary schools, 20 at our middle schools, and 40 at our high schools, as well as certain additional cameras at support facilities. We've installed lockdown panic devices strategically located in various parts of our buildings, and we've also installed card reader access devices at various exterior doors throughout our district, including all our support facilities. As part of our building security system, we had an old analog system. We changed out all the security intrusion panels, the keypads, and converted those to digital operation. And that helps control and monitors all our security alarms, our we have glass breakage sensors as well as motion detectors installed in our buildings. And we've had that security measure for many, many years. We also installed these blue towers, as I called them, our emergency call centers. We've strategically located those at our secondary campuses that you've seen around the district. And in one of our bigger projects, we had to install 4 new communication towers, as well as we provided new digital radios of 3,500 radios approximately throughout the district to provide support not only to our police department, but maintenance and operations, transportation, and other support departments, as well as our campuses, so we can have improved communications throughout the district in the event of any emergency. In addition, one of the things we're adding right now, it's underway, is the installation of lockdown panic devices at all 274 portable buildings. So those are going on as we speak, and getting those installed as quickly as we possibly can for this school year. As the committee's discussed many different options, and as Dr. Henry indicated, we're exploring different new technologies that are coming on the market. It seems like daily we're getting inundated with lots of emails with the latest and greatest products out there. But we're looking at those products and trying to figure out what's to be the best next layer we can incorporate into our facilities. But some of the things that we're already looking at and investigating right now, and working with our architects and evaluating and coming up with some cost estimates to see how we could look at implementing is, as you all know, some of our elementary schools have more of a semi-open floor plan. We're looking at those locations of how we can come in and add some additional walls, again, to create some additional layers and provide safety and security for our staff and our students. We're looking at removal of exterior door handles on a lot of our schools. As you know, at a high school, we probably have anywhere from 50 to 60 plus exterior doors, and a lot of them all have handles. So we're working with the fire marshal on that to see how we can go about removing that and still stay in compliance with the fire codes. We're also looking at different measures of how we can identify key doors that are strictly exit only or emergency exit only. You've probably seen it in restaurants and other facilities where you have that alarm on the door. If you open it, sounds a local alarm off to indicate, hey, you're not supposed to be going through this door opening. There's other technologies available that we're researching and also working with the fire marshal office to look at egress requirements from a fire and making sure we have a clear understanding of the interpretation of the code to see if there's other ways we can try to prevent those doors from being open during the day and still provide a safe exit in the event of an emergency such as a fire in our facilities. We're also looking at and doing an evaluation right now of where all our portable buildings are located and how we can better secure them, and looking at probably providing some additional fencing to just provide some additional security measures at those campuses. One of the things we're looking at is our signage and our interior signage of our campuses. Unfortunately, as an architect, we're not always the greatest people to figure out the numbering system in a building and how we label it when we produce drawings. We have some campuses where there's some inconsistency of the door numbering in the facilities. And we feel that's very important for law enforcement. If we did have an event that they had to respond to, we want to make sure we have some very consistent nomenclature within the inside of the building that would allow them to be able to get quickly to the location where we may have an event to respond to. The other thing, we have locks on all our classroom doors. There's new technologies out there that you can look at doing wireless buttons to control and open and close those doors. In our recent schools, we've installed a visual indicator with the deadbolt lock. You'll see on the inside of the classroom, it'll be, if it's locked, it will show that it's red, and if it's open, it'll show that it's green. So that way, our occupants of the classroom, whether it's a teacher or a student, if we were getting into lockdown mode, they can visually see at that door if that door is physically locked or not. And if it's not, somebody go run the door, engage the deadbolt, and then continue to conduct their lockdown procedures if it's in a situation they have to do that. So we're looking at that technology as well and seeing how we can implement that throughout the district. And on a last note, as I mentioned, there's lots of new technologies out there, different radar type detector devices that we're researching right now. We're working very closely with our architects to evaluate and see how those devices work. In fact, in a couple of cases, we're trying to get pilot samples of these products, and we'll actually try to put a pilot in a couple of our campuses as soon as we can get the manufacturers to agree to give us a couple of pilots for us so we can test out that technology and see if it's going to be worthwhile for us to invest those funds in as we move forward. And I'm going to now turn it over to Bill Powell.
Good evening. My name is Bill Powell. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Support Services. The identification portion of the plan includes all students in grades 6 through 12 are required to wear a student ID on school-approved lanyards during the instructional day. Elementary and secondary students are required to have an ID badge in order to utilize CFISD transportation. All CFISD employees are required to wear an employee ID while on district property and when conducting district business. And all visitors, regardless of how frequently they are in a building, are required to sign in at the front desk and wear a visitor's badge. These requirements standardize and reinforce our current ID guidelines for staff and law enforcement to more easily identify students, employees, and visitors at all of our district campuses and facilities.
Good evening. I think I have the wrong slide. There we go. Good evening. Beginning the first day of school this year, all secondary students in grades 6 through 12 who choose to carry a backpack to school will be required to use a clear backpack. In addition, students can carry 2 additional non-transparent bags inside or outside of their backpacks. Those items may not exceed 6 by 9 inches in size and include lunch kits, purses, or any similar bags. Students who participate in extracurricular activities can carry approved extracurricular bags, including band instruments. Upon entry into the school, those bags will be stored in respective areas during the instructional day. We've worked very collaboratively with our communications department, and on the district website, we have the document that you have this evening. It's very detailed, and it has answers and questions that we've received from our community. Thank you. Travis?
Good evening. In addition to the clear backpack policy at our secondary campuses, we will also have the institution of the clear bag policy at Pridgeon and Cyfair FCU stadiums. This policy is very similar to those at the NFL and collegiate stadiums. Our CFISD policy limits bags to being clear or transparent. Bags that are non-transparent and not clear may not be any larger than 6" by 9" in size. As Roy Sprague mentioned, our campuses range between having 27 to 80 exterior doors. One of the focuses of the Safety and Security Committee during our time of planning was on limiting access and access points to our campuses. Through the work of the committee, we are implementing procedures to address both of those. Before, after, and during school, there will be limited entry points for faculty, students, and visitors to our campuses. Procedures for faculty and students needing access between the main and portable buildings will be implemented at each of our campuses. Deliveries from restaurants such as Uber Eats, Pizza Hut, and etc. are prohibited for our students. In addition to each of our 91 campuses will review and enhance their delivery of drop-off procedures, that's including lunch and any items during the day. If changes occur to this policy or procedures for their campus, their parents and community will be notified. All revised campus procedures and protocols regarding limited access points will be included in the campus emergency operation plan. These plans will be reviewed and approved by CFISD PD Emergency Management Division. At the close of the 17-18 school year, you emphasize as a school board the importance of receptionists being trained on how to engage with parents and visitors to determine the reason for their visits. In addition to the general information shared at our yearly receptionist training, there will be time dedicated to honing the effective strategies that are essential for them to assist in keeping our campuses safe. Their training will include customer service and de-escalation techniques, as well as security training. All receptionists, their backup persons, and identified subs will be trained on August 24th. At this time, I'll turn it over to Matt Morgan.
Good evening. Currently, our students are subject to metal detector checks at the campuses and also large district events such as varsity football games. Before making a large capital investment in additional equipment, we decided to be wise to form a committee which would include district and campus administrators, teachers, students, and parents to research the feasibility of expanding the use of metal detectors and identify other potential technologies that might be used at the campuses. We recently released a request for qualifications to hire a security consultant to come in and advise us on procedures, facility needs, and the fiscal impact of metal detectors.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Identification and intervention. Currently, the Cypher ISD Police Department and the Cypher District utilizes the anonymous tip line. Part of the governor's recommendations was to utilize either DPS iWatch or Crime Stoppers component for individuals to provide anonymous tips regarding information that occurred at our district. What we have learned and what I can tell you is that CFISD tip line is a valued tool within our district. It's been in place since 2015, and over the years we have received numerous tips. This last year alone we received just close to 1,000 tips. The year before we received just over 1,000 tips. What I find interesting and I approve of the tip line is that Our students and our staff and individuals within our community that utilize the tip line, they provide information to ensure the safety and security of our students every day by providing the information without any regard of worrying about receiving compensation, such as Crime Stoppers paying for tips. And so if we have individuals willing to provide the information without knowledge of receiving a tip, then I think that we're very beneficial in the information we receive. So the tip line has been very current. It provides us information. The police department does go out and investigate each threat that it comes to the district or the department, and then we ensure that the campus administration is aware of tips or threats or information that they need to look into. So the campus tip line or the anonymous tip line is very beneficial, and so we are going to stay with the tip line as we move forward. Social media monitoring. The Houston Regional Intelligence Service Center, or the Fusion Center, is a fusion center that is comprised here in Houston, Texas. Every large metropolitan area across the nation has a fusion center. It provides intel and information on threats and areas of concern that come in the area of Harris County. So we are able to obtain information from the Intelligence Center, whether it's through social media or if there are threats made in person and through various forms. We utilize the Regional Intelligence Center to provide that information to us, and then we provide the information to them to help us investigate certain social media threats. They have the abilities and tools to dive a little deeper into social media threats, and so that's how we use them. So we utilize the Fusion Center, we utilize DPS, and we utilize our federal partners to look into social media threats and social media monitoring. So the district itself doesn't have a social media platform that we have used, but I feel very comfortable with our partnerships that we have with the Houston Fusion Center, with Harris County, with DPS, and our federal partners to ensure that we do monitor our social media. Mental health intervention.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Schluter, and I'm the Director of Psychological Services here in the district. As Dr. Henry mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, part of the target goal of our team has been to look at early identification and intervention of the mental health needs and providing supports and services with regard to those mental health needs to the students that we serve here in Cypher ISD. So with that, we have determined that we would like to form the two mental health intervention teams effective for the 2018-19 school year. The formation of those two mental health intervention teams will be comprised of two licensed professional counselors, one licensed specialist in school psychology, and one mental health trained school resource officer. One team would be working out of the north side of our district. One team of 4 would be working out of the south side of our district. The focus of those teams would be to respond and to provide additional support for students that are experiencing significant mental health concerns and behavioral concerns here in our schools. We want to provide these students and the campus administration and the parents and families of these students with additional positive behavioral supports and protective plans and services that can enrich their lives and help to them to refocus on their academic goals and make those advancements. We want to provide ongoing mental health awareness and training and information sessions also to the parents and the community at large. Part of the focus of the services of the mental health intervention teams would be to look at the referrals that come in from the campuses, to do initial screenings and follow-ups, to provide individual counseling as needed with parental consent, to provide consultation to the students, to the staff at the school level, to provide mediation, to do program development, to provide implementation and monitoring of the suggested plan of action, and to collaborate with other mental health professionals outside the school setting to form a wraparound and well executed plan for their mental health needs. Effective for the 2018-19 school year, we have also established a mental health assessment training titled Mental Health Knowledge, Intervention, and Support for All Youth in Cypher ISD. We have been executing and delivering this training already to counselors, both at the secondary and the elementary level, to all district and campus administrators, to the transportation department, and to community program staff. Beginning next week, we will be presenting this training to all of the teachers as they come to the Teacher RRR conference at the Berry Center. We're excited about this training because it's focusing on mental health and mental health awareness. The focus of the training not only is to talk about the importance of building and establishing and maintaining relationships and good communication with our students and with our families, but also providing just basic mental health information to students to staff and that don't have any clinical training, but so that they have a good knowledge of what they're looking for when they're working with our students every day. We want to provide them with some risk factors and some warning signs and how-tos so that they can access and know how to access the supports and services that we currently have in place for our students. We want to provide them with information that we do suicide risk assessments, that we do violence threat assessments in the school, and we want to provide them with information about the crisis response, the unified crisis response plans that we already have in place, so that they will be aware and know that there will be supports available for them. Effective also for the 2018-19 school year, and this has already begun, we are doing training with all of our secondary and elementary counselors on completion of threat assessment interviews. This is very important because we want to make sure that our staff are trained in how to appropriately conduct a threat assessment interview using information that is both peer-reviewed and research-based. We want to be sure that we're providing our staff with the skills that they need to look at concerns that are coming to them and to determine whether these concerns are transient or not very serious threats, or whether they are substantive threats that have a plan behind them and something that we need to make sure that we're focusing on and addressing. Also effective for the 2018-19 school year, we want to form a committee of campus and district leaders that will review counselor caseloads and determine things that non-counselor related duties that might be reassigned so that our counselors on our campuses, elementary, middle school, and high school, can have more of an opportunity to work directly with students that have mental health needs and supports and engage them. We also want to consider whether the expansion of the Psychological Services Department's APA accredited doctoral internship training program from the current status of having 8 doctoral level interns to 10 doctoral level interns would be beneficial for the district in terms of providing additional supports and services to those in need.
Good afternoon, Dr. Henry, members of the board. There we go. The Safety Committee currently develops and implements the emergency operations plans for the district, reviews the district school and safety and security audits on a yearly basis, and reviews any reports required to be submitted to the Texas School Safety Center, which is a DAW tool that we submit every 3 years. The next one is scheduled to be submitted in 2020. Effective for the 2018 and 2019 school year, the Safety Committee will meet 3 times a year. Well, we used to meet 2 times a year, but it's increased to once in the summer and once per semester. We provide updates and reports to the Board of Trustees twice per year, and the committee will include representation from the list you see on the screens here. In addition to the representation that you see listed, area first responders will also be included in that. On July 31st, we had a meeting with the first responders in the area at the Cypress-Fairbanks Volunteer Fire Department. Those at that meeting included Harris County Precinct 4, Precinct 5, Harris County Sheriff's Office, Sock Creek EMS, the Harris County Fire Marshal's Office, Champions Forest, and a few others. And in that meeting, we had a plan to have a live exercise by the summer of 2019. As we talk about our current EOPs, all campuses are required to have an emergency operation plan, and there's normally an administrator who's assigned with that task for every campus. They submit and review their plans to our department. We review those. Guidance is given on creation of the plan if they have any questions or concerns about what the plan should include and what it should look like, which includes a transportation plan for unification for every campus. EOPs are based on a template that was provided by the Texas School Safety Center, and they must include identifying all threats, hazards, vulnerabilities, assessing the capabilities of response, developing effective response protocols and training, and drilling to the plan. So in addition to those hazards, we actually have created a pipeline annex for each campus, which for every campus and facility in the district. We have a train derailment annex for every campus in the district and facility. And also we do a community hazard assessment for every district facility in the district. At this time, I turn it over to Chief Mendez.
The CFISD Police Department also prepares for active shooter response and emergency response through training. All of our officers are trained in advanced law enforcement rapid response. That's a national response that's being adopted by law enforcement agencies to train for an active shooter situation. We also train in exterior response to active shooter events, which is a race. All of our officers are either being trained or have been trained in either crisis intervention training, which is a mental health component, or they are mental health certified officers. As we talked a little earlier, 2 of the officers in our department will be assigned to part of the mental health teams that are being created for north and south of the district. And then also this year, and we started earlier last week and the week before, we created a curriculum to train all of our staff in our district. And so we are providing active shooter response training. We provided training during the safety conference a couple days ago. We've already provided training to part of the counselors. All next week during the teacher orientation, all of the teachers will also receive training in active shooter response and what to do. We've done all of the transportation department, and we continue to get the rest of the staff as we get into the school year. And again, there it is, all active, all campus and district ministers will be trained in standard, I'm sorry, this is different. Is this case here or is it still me? It's still me, okay. So part of the safety conference, we had the I Love You Guys Foundation come out. John Michael Keys, he is the founder of the I Love You Guys Foundation. Part of what we are adding to our emergency operations plan is the standard response protocol and the standard reunification method. All of our campuses will learn and know about the standard response protocol and the standard reunification method. In the event of an emergency, we have specific language of what they are to do. It's very common language, and it's as simple as changing from not shelter in place, secure in place, to lock out. So we want to be very specific in the wording we use and very specific in how we produce our reunifications of primary and secondary locations. And so everyone will be trained over the course of this summer or the remainder of the summer. And as we get into the new year, Casey and his team will work with our campus administration when they're developing their EOPs to ensure that these protocols are in place. Mental health.
So that you're aware, our current mental health crisis response team consists of the individuals that you see on the screen. We currently employ a team of licensed behavioral health professionals here in Cypher ISD who are already trained and prepared to respond during critical incidents. Those include the Director of Guidance and Counseling, the 3 guidance and counseling coordinators, more than 240 counselors that are that work at each of our campuses, middle school, elementary, and high school. We have 14 youth service specialists that are social workers that are duly employed here in the district with Harris County Department of Education and with our department, with our district. We have 1 licensed chemical dependency counselor, the Director of Psychological Services, 29 doctorate level psychologists or LSSPs, and 8 doctoral level interns. The majority of these individuals are already trained in NOVA, which is the National Organization for Victims Assistance Crisis Response Training, and also in the Prepare 1 and Prepare 2, which is the National Association of School Psychologists recommended training for being prepared to respond to a crisis and for how to respond to a crisis once it occurs. And also we have trainers of trainers for both of those. We also have a trainer of trainers in the psychology department for the psychological first aid, which is a mental health first aid training for the layperson and how to respond to someone who's having a mental health crisis and be with them and help facilitate their needs until they can get to a professional mental health provider.
Approximately 5 years ago, the district purchased a mass notification tool called School Messenger. This system allows us to communicate with parents and guardians by email, phone, or text. We know in today's society, text messaging is often the preferred way to receive communication, and our district's communication survey 2 years ago confirmed this. However, an individual must intentionally opt in to receive text messages by School Messenger. The percentage rate of opt-in text messaging is currently low. We will be launching a district-wide campaign soon for all parents and guardians to understand the benefits of opting in. In addition, we will also be conducting training with our schools and departments on best practices for use of School Messenger. School Messenger allows for the recipient to unsubscribe to messages. And we know that if we over-communicate with parents, message fatigue can result, and they will ultimately unsubscribe. Then we've lost them. Our goal is to be able to communicate with our parents and guardians in the maximum number of ways, especially in a crisis.
Good evening. I'm going to provide you with some information about the costs that we have already expended in recent years, as well as planned expenditures this coming school year, 2018-2019, to address our security and safety measures. As you know, we established our police department in 2011 with funding from the 2010-11 operating budget. The inception of the police department included, at that time, a police chief and 19 commissioned police officers. This chart depicts our efforts since then to ramp up our commitment to the police department every year to where we will have 108 police officers and 3 canines in 2018-19. And you can see that since 2011, we will have spent over $73 million for our police department by the end of 2018-19. All of these amounts that are shown here for every year are actual expenditures except for 2018-19. That is their adopted budget for the police department. As Mr. Sprague mentioned earlier, the 2014 bond program included $55 million dedicated solely to improve safety and security at our campuses and other facilities. The next 2 slides detail the amounts spent on the various projects included in the bond funding. You can see additional building access card readers, front entry video cameras with buzzers, the lockdown panic buttons, and that amount includes the amount for panic buttons at all of the portable buildings to be installed in 2018-19. Front entry security vestibules, bullet-resistant glass at the security vestibules, 4 radio communication towers and digital radios. We have additional security cameras. We replaced analog security cameras with digital. If we had something analog, it was gone. It was replaced with digital. We upgraded our DVA and DVR and additional DVRs to support those digital cameras. And we made security improvements at the Berry Center. Couldn't get all of those projects on one slide, so the next slide shows that we replaced additional analog security intrusion panels with digital, upgraded the closed caption TV security surveillance equipment, after-hour separation of cafeterias, emergency call boxes. So all in all, the 2014 bond funded $55,468,303. In addition to that, although not part of the 2014 bond bond program, in addition, I have included there at the bottom, we have budgeted an additional $1 million in the 2018-19 operating budget to fund a variety of other safety and security initiatives that are currently being studied and will be determined and recommended by the District Safety and Security Committee. These items may include measures to further harden our campuses, expand the use of metal detectors, additional police department needs, additional counselors, mental health initiatives, and improvements at our campus facilities that Mr. Sprague presented earlier. We have received about $665,000 in federal grants funded under Title IV for mental health initiatives that are recommended by our mental health crisis response team. That includes 2 mental health psychologists, 4 mental health counselors, and 2 mental health police officers that were mentioned earlier as well. So this last slide is really a summary or recap of the total cost of all of our safety and security measures since 2011 with the inception of the police department. That amount totals $130,824,503. Of this amount, $117 million has already been spent since 2011 to address safety and security on our campuses and other facilities, with another $13.5 million to be spent this coming school year, 2018-19.
At this time, I'd like to review with you our communication plan for safety and security initiatives. As you heard earlier in the presentation, a decision was made in June to require secondary students to use clear backpacks this upcoming school year. A message from the superintendent was sent out to the community and parents. A frequently asked questions, or FAQ, was posted on the district website, and a notice was placed on social media. Earlier this week, this FAQ was updated based on feedback from our Safety and Security Committee meetings, and you'll find a copy of that at your desk. A school messenger call and email went out to all secondary students in English and Spanish, and reminders were posted on the district and school websites and social media. At the safety conference yesterday, each secondary principal picked up one of these posters to display at their campus, and we shared an overview of the communication plan. Tonight, you are hearing the full report. Following the board meeting on Monday, we will issue a press release detailing the Safety and Security Action Plan. We will also post this on the district website and social media. On Tuesday of next week, Dr. Henry will be sending out his Welcome Back to School message with the community, and he will share the emphasis we have placed on safety and security to date, and the new initiatives we are taking for the school year. The school websites and the Connection for Community newsletter will reference this as well. We have provided the principals with talking points for communicating the plan with their community, including some sample videos, which you may soon see on social media. We will be launching a district safety and security video series highlighting many of these initiatives. These short videos will be ideal to share on social media, display on the video monitors in our secondary schools, and even show at our football games on the scoreboards. Our first video will kick off the first week of school showcasing the Cyfair tip line, or See Something, Say Something. We are confident that a well-thought-out safety and security action plan and a plan for communication will enable our CFISD community to understand the steps the district is taking regarding prevention, identification and intervention, and response. Dr. Henry?
Thank you, Ms. Francis. And just to close it out, I'd like to say thank you for everyone who worked really diligently and hard this summer putting this together. We would never tell you as an administrative or as a leadership team it's a perfect plan, but we think it's a plan that provides the safest environment for our staff and students and the visitors to our campuses or events. So we are certainly all here and will be here and are prepared to answer any questions that you might have about any part of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you all for that very comprehensive report. Don?
First, I do want to commend the district. Stuart, you brought it up since 2011, the amount of money we've spent on security, and obviously in light of recent events that comes to the forefront more than it probably does in the years that we don't have unfortunate incidents like that happen. But our district's always, I think, been more proactive than reactive, and I'm very grateful for that, and I think probably everybody on the board that has students is grateful for that. On a lot of the emails that I got and that I'm sure everyone else got were on the clear backpacks. And one of those was, a lot of them had to deal with feminine hygiene products in the backpacks, and it looks like iffy that we addressed that with the non-transparent 6x9 purses, so those would be permitted in the backpacks.
Yes, they'll be permitted to have 2 additional non-transparent bags outside of the clear backpack.
And then a couple of the other emails addressed, we've got the number of economically disadvantaged students in our district has increased every year. What are we doing about students with the cost of those backpacks?
What we'll do is what we've always done. We've always made backpacks and school supplies available at our campuses for our students who are economically disadvantaged. We'll do the same thing. We'll have some options for the campuses. And in addition to that, every campus will have available these backpacks at the cost of $10 per bag to also sell in their respective school stores. So we'll take care of our students who are in need, as we've always done.
Just to add on to that a little bit, we're going to have, we have already purchased, I believe, Matt, 43,000 clear backpacks. So we're going to have those available at our campuses, like Iffy said. And if someone needs a backpack, we're going to get them a backpack. If for students that need those and $10 is outside that price range, they'll have a backpack.
And then on the, can I just go through a couple of these, John, and then I'll be done? On the mental health intervention teams, I think that was page 10. If we talk about individual counseling for students with parental consent, is there a cost to those families for that counseling?
No, absolutely not. There would not be a cost to that counseling. We would look at providing the counseling as they need it, just in terms of length of sessions and services based on need.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is
Don, could I just add one thing before Dr. Schluter sits down? And I want to make sure that this board hears this, but that the community hears this also, that there's never anything positive that comes out of tragedies like we saw last spring. But the one thing that we did see is that people in high places were finally realized or made aware that we do have a mental health crisis in this country, not just at schools, in this country. And so one of the things is an acknowledgement of that. And most of our efforts this summer were around addressing the mental health crisis and making counseling available for our students and families. So that might get asked again, but that's important for people to hear, that we're concentrating on the identification and providing care for those people before we ever get to any type of preventive measures.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Henry.
And then my last question on School Messenger. Leslie, this is probably for you. Typically we had it to where when the kids were in school, we would get a message from Cypher High School that we'll be doing testing or we'll be doing something else. Do we have the ability, when the kids went to college, the college would have, and I think they called it a code maroon, that would be, it wouldn't just be, hey, we're testing this week. It would be something, if there's a lockdown at Cypher High School, that would go to every parent at Cypher High School and say, school's on lockdown because of this. Because typically I hear about lockdown from someone that their kid has sent them a text, or it's on Facebook, that the kid's already put it on Facebook. Do we have the ability to opt in parents regardless on something like that? Or I don't know the rules on that, to where, does our system have the ability to do that?
My understanding is they have to choose to be opted in for a text message. We can't force that. We do have their numbers, and so the campaign we're going to roll out soon is we're going to force one text message out to all of them, explaining what the system is and the benefits of it, and asking them to opt in on that. But my understanding is we absolutely cannot text at will messages when they have not opted in. Marnie?
Is there, well, let me elaborate on it a little bit. Is there a way to differentiate between, if I opt in and I get an abundance of messages on, hey, there's a pep rally, hey, because some campuses send more than others, and then you talked about overload.
Message fatigue.
Message fatigue versus something serious.
Yes, and that's what we're going to be working with our campuses and our departments on, some good guidelines on when to use one versus the other and how often to use it, because when you are constantly getting those messages about a pep rally or money for a yearbook or picture day or things like that, then you're not apt to pay attention when something important is going on.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll go to this side, Debbie.
Tracy, I had a question under the mental health intervention teams. That same one, the individual counseling that Dawn talked about, my question's a little bit different. What if a student is identified as needing counseling and maybe a potential threat and the parent refuses counseling for their child? How can that be handled?
That's a very good question. I think that that goes back to relationships and communication, and that we really want to formulate a positive, appropriate relationship with the whole family, because often when you see a student that has some concerns, there's potentially some additional concerns around that single unit, that single person. So in my mind, it would be that we would want to make sure that we step back and really work with that family and try to understand what's going on, that why that family would not want to receive that service that is being provided by the school that's free of charge. I certainly would think too that we would want to look at, is there any kind of a concern in terms of, is there another way that we can come around and look at addressing some supports and services for that child too, that we're looking at the whole package and the whole picture.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I see Chief.
I am going to add in that with the mental health officers that we have the ability under state law to do emergency detentions. And so we have been working with the mental health officers that we have already put into place. We have been working to formulate agreements with mental health facilities where we can take these students in crisis or showing signs of crisis so that we can start the treatment. An EDO, or an emergency detention order, is mandatory. They have to stay for a minimum of 3 days. Within the 3 days, that is when we have to work hard and diligent to work with the parents to try to get them to understand the importance of understanding the mental health crisis and being willing to work with us after the 3-day commitment. Because at the end of the 3 days, it's going to be incumbent upon the parents to help us, and then the purpose of the mental health officer is to be able to provide a liaison between the mental health facility and with our school counselor so that we can continue to provide a wraparound service when the kids come back to school. So there's going to be ways to address it. Parental consent is the best, but there are ways to work through it, and so it's just getting the parents to understand.
Good. And I have one more question. I guess this would be...
Could I ask Chief something before you leave? Chief, where will the mental health officers be stationed?
They will not be stationed. They will be part of the 2 teams that are north and south of the district. First thing you have to remember is that all of our officers receive training in crisis. So they all have the ability, any police officer in the district has the ability to do a mental health assessment and do an emergency detention order should the need arise. The purpose of the mental health officers and bringing them in is to be able to continue the communication between the treatment facility and the school district. We're going to provide that line of communication so that they can liaison the information back and forth, work with the parents, work with other outside providers to help get resources for the parents. So they're not going to be stationed in any one location. They're going to be out and about in the district. We will establish protocols within the district for a low, medium, and high risk for our students suffering from mental illness. And so dependent on the risk level, it may be continued sessions with the school counselor. It may be sessions where the parents are involved and we start looking for outside sources, or it may be a high crisis where we're putting them into a treatment facility where they get immediate treatment, and then we have the ability, once they're released, to provide a wraparound service within the district and other outside providers to continue. We've made, within the last 2 weeks, we've made a lot of contacts and a lot of networking that has taken place so that we are going to find ways to provide. And so should everything go as planned, by the time school starts, our mental health officers will be prepared to start working on these crises.
Okay, thank you. Leslie, I have a question for you. And maybe I just missed it, but I heard you speak about communicating with English and Spanish-speaking parents, but we have many dialects spoken in our district. So what is the plan to communicate with those?
So those are the two languages that we typically send out in the form of a call out or an email message. When there's a request from a campus for a particular language, we translate and we handle that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Christine.
I will echo Don. The thought put into this over the summer is phenomenal. I want to say thank you to everybody who worked so hard on this. Going to the mental health training, I'm thankful that, I've always said that that's what's happening here, and I'm thankful for that. I saw it as a teacher at Lone Star, where there might be a student who, was in crisis, and I walked him over to the counselor's office that day. But then I've seen the other student who was kind of not aggressive with another teacher, but you could see the red flags. So I'm thankful that we are training. That's a big focus for us to train our teachers, everybody who's involved with the students. I think that was a huge aha moment for me last year, receiving that training as a teacher, that a child who is sullen and sad all the time, who comes to school the next day and they're happy, and you think, oh good, they're back to a normal self. Well, no, it's because they've made a plan, maybe to commit suicide. They're happy because now they have a plan. But it wasn't something that maybe I had thought about before. So this training, I think, is imperative for all of our people who are working with our students. I wanted to say that I really, it was a question about the portables, and it was answered immediately. I think that so many of our students are kind of in those precarious situations sitting out there, and I really applaud the issuance of the panic buttons out there. And I know as a mom who, my daughter was in one for 2 periods last year, you kind of think about, oh, well, what's going to happen with them? So I appreciate that. And then I just the communication that y'all are giving everybody. I was thinking about the doors when Roy was talking about taking the handles off different doors and everything. I spent a lot of time volunteering at one of the high schools over the past few years, and you see that bell ring and you see people just everywhere. I see such a need for that, really kind of stopping everybody getting in at every single door. You could see how somebody could get in who wants to cause them harm. Will that make sometimes things harder for our students getting from class to class? Yes, but we need to communicate to the students and the parents. It will make it harder for someone to hurt our students. So I just appreciate all that y'all are doing. Thanks.
Bob?
First off, just to commend you. This is an excellent report, and thank you for taking the time and doing this, because this is something that the community needs to hear, and I'll be one that's going on Facebook tonight to say you need to look at the Thursday night meeting and see what's happening in the district with safety and security. I was reading, just glancing over, I was paying attention, but I was reading over the governor and what Cyfair's done, and it's amazing how we match what he put down and what we are already doing and what we have done. I commend you for doing that. When I say that, and I'm very proud of what you're doing, and then I'm going to come down to a question, because one of the things with my wife being a teacher for 30 years in the district, one of the things I used to hear was our counselors spend more time with tests than they do with individual students. And I understand the awareness of mental health now, and I also understand what we're saying we're going to do with counselors. Are we going to be manned enough to be able to do that? And that's a concern that I have, whether or not we're going to have enough counselors on staff to be able to handle not only mental health, but all of their other requirements. So that's a question for whomever wants to tackle that one for me.
I'm going to start out and then turn it over to Roy, if that's okay, because I saw him hit his button over there. But I've already had the opportunity to speak to both of our counseling groups, secondary and elementary, and one of the commitments that we have made is to try to reduce their administrative duties so that they have more time to counsel. And the good thing is that under Roy's umbrella are principals and counselors. So we'll be able to work along those lines, but we're going to have a committee to find a way. The one positive thing, again, that I talked about earlier was the recognition of mental health issues, the need for more counseling. If we receive additional state funds and even additional federal funds, I believe they're going to be targeted to safety, security, and mental health. So I think we have a real chance, even in the legislative session, to get additional funds to help address the need for more counseling, more mental health services. But Roy, I'll let you run with it from there.
Well, you did a great job with that. The only thing I would add is just a little bit more detail in that committee that was mentioned, that we will take a look at that, utilizing principals and various departments, school administration, of course, guidance and counseling, curriculum and instruction, human resources, to take a look at the current job description of the counselor and then other positions on the campus as well, and looking at if something does move away from the counselor, who takes that on them, and then what do we need to do to ensure that they have the support system in place.
Okay, thanks. And the final, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll add one more thing to that, and this is political, but not that political, Marnie, so I'm not. But one thing that the state could do very easily is reduce the requirements of standardized testing. Counselors get so caught up in that. So that would be one thing they could do that wouldn't cost them a dime. In fact, it would save them money, and they could redirect that money towards counseling. And then I'll be quiet.
You got your plug in. Thank you. One final thing, in one of the advocacy institutes that I went to, and it was right after, actually, I'm the one that was on the East Coast. I went blank on the name of it. Florida? No, up in New England area. Anyway, Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook. Okay. One of the things that was stated was, and it was the security officers were talking to us about developing programs, and one of the things is you need to have a plan A and a plan B, because if you have a plan A, because let's just say that there is an active shooter and everybody rushes to take care of that, somebody could be having a heart attack on the other side of the building, and who do you have that's going to address that? And so that was one of my questions. I was just curious, do y'all take that in consideration, that we actually have backup plans for other things happening?
Yes. The short answer is yes. We always plan, and that's part of your emergency operations plan, is that you have your primary and secondary plans, your primary and secondary evacuation points, your reunification points, because Murphy's Law, right? If something's going to happen, it's probably going to happen more than once. And so we want to prepare as best as we can by having well-trained officers, and then, of course, having well-trained staff. And that's part of the reason that we decided to start training all of our staff across the district in active shooter response, so that, and in the training, they learn it's not just active shooter, it's having a plan of action, it's considering a plan of action, whether you're at the mall, the theater, if it's a different incident at a campus, you want to have a plan of action. And so while we talk and say it's active shooter response, it was also training to have a plan of action and a secondary plan of action. We talked about when you do evacuation drills, everybody can see in a classroom there's a map on the wall of a green line, a green arrow to show you where to go, and then there's a secondary red arrow of a secondary location to go. And so during our trainings, we've talked to staff about, during a fire drill, don't always use the green arrow. Consider using the secondary plan of action, because during an actual event, you may not be able to use that evacuation route, and you have to know the other evacuation route. So the emphasis is planning, and not just planning for one event, but planning for multiple events and planning for different scenarios within an event that could happen and how you're going to react.
Great. Thank y'all very much.
Tom.
I suspect you won't mind hearing again from another board member what an excellent job you all have done in putting this together. Very thoughtful, and I appreciate it. Down in the weeds, looking at the clear backpack, some, I don't know, 18, 19 years ago when we rolled this out before, we had a couple of deficiencies in it. You have addressed them. So one for the ladies, you've addressed it. The clear backpacks, not everybody could afford it. 40,000 is a big number. And I would suspect if we needed more, we'd go back to the well and get more. Third, the clear backpacks don't last. They aren't sturdy enough. To address that situation, I took my kids' backpacks to Houston Shoe Hospital. One I had leather sewn on the bottom, the other one I had leather corners put on. Both of my kids got written up for not having clear backpacks, and they were told they couldn't bring them back to school. Well, if you look in the weeds, y'all have addressed that. You've addressed the fact that we're trying to get the backpacks to last all year long, and I want to compliment you for looking at the tiniest of the details. One question I have for Chief, and I don't know if this is a good idea or a bad idea, I would merely ask you to think about it. Back when I did IT assessments, and I used to be a national presenter in the area of security as related to IT installations. Contracts that I would work under, not only would I go in and do an assessment, write it up, management would give a response, but then 6 months later, as part of that contract, unbeknownst to IT management, it was then my job to have somebody go back out and check those areas that we cited as deficiencies to see had they in fact been addressed. I know we have our security audit every 3 years. We saw the result of it. Y'all provided it. The management response to that was also provided. But I'm wondering, is what I did some 35 years ago, maybe longer ago than that, in the IT world, does that translate to physical security in the educational building world? I don't know that it does. I just wanted to suggest it as something to think about on y'all's side of the fence.
What I will say to that, sir, is that we are required to provide the results of the audits every 3 years. The purpose is because the audits are continuous, and so we could not, the state and the School Safety Center allow for you to have time to audit every campus in your district. And so at the end of 3 years, we provide you the results, but the very next year, or within that year, we're already doing audits and intruder assessments again and again and again at the campuses. So we have to provide the results every 3 years, but the safety audits and the intruder assessments are done just about every year, so that we work through every school so that at the end of a 3-year cycle, we can provide the results again. And Casey can probably answer a little bit better about the assessments, and that's his primary responsibility. But I will say that at the end of 3 years, we don't stop and then wait 3 years to do the assessments again. They're continuous. Every year, we're doing safety audits and intruder assessments so that we're prepared for the end of a 3-year result. Does that answer your question, sir?
That answers part of it, so that it is a continuous approach and evaluation. The other part of it is when deficiencies are identified. So in the last 3-year audit, we had a list of deficiencies that were identified. My colleague talked about one of the deficiencies. Do we have a reevaluation of that specific deficiency to see, was our response adequate?
Yes, sir. Currently, we do. I had a conversation with Roy Garcia a little bit earlier in the year as far as once identified deficiency, whether it be intruder or otherwise, he receives that report, and his responsibility to reach out to that administrator, and we'll go back and reassess it. So after the conversation he has with him, we'll go back again and do that. If I find, or a member of my team finds that they failed an intruder audit, we'll go back the next month and do it again and report to that administrator and that AP responsible for safety and security for that campus.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. I do appreciate the enhanced emphasis upon mental health. Our wonderful state is recognized as having the least funding for mental health throughout the entire state itself. And Mark, I hope you're right that although the conversation has started, I hope it translates into action. I would certainly, once again, I'll issue a call. I'd like the board to have a resolution, perhaps sometime in September, where we ask with specificity for some financial relief from the state. We're all locally elected officials, and I think that that's entirely appropriate for us to take that step. But then again, I'm only one voice in the
Dr. Ogletree, thank you. I do think all my questions have been answered, but I did want to say thank you for the thoroughness of this report and for the work that's been done. And I am very pleased to see the breadth and depth of our plan. And I'm very hopeful that we'll have a very safe school year.
Thank you. I just have a couple of things.
John, I did find my other question. May I, or do you want me to wait?
Go ahead.
Okay. Mark, this really goes to you on an annual basis, or at least every other year basis. I'll always make a halfway snarky question about caseload for our counselors. Obviously, already know the answer. Certainly, you have addressed reducing that caseload. And I certainly say that I am supportive of the concept. I can still remember getting a phone call at 8 o'clock at night from a counselor saying, "I'm sorry to call you so late, Mr. Jackson, but you're the 15th call I've made, and I'm still at campus." So anything we can do in that regard, I'm supportive of it. Thank you.
That's not just a goal or a promise. We're going to make it happen.
All right. One of the things I wanted to ask, and maybe this to you, Dr. Moore, in the perpetrator in one of the school shootings was wearing an unusual garment for that season and that time. Did the committee address have any consideration on or talk about clothing and any limitations or clothing prescriptions?
I'm going to let Iffy give you the details, but I honestly think going all the way back to 1999 after the Columbine incident that dress codes were changed to address that issue. Where I will go back to say that what we're committed to do, there's only 2 or 3 things that we're asking our students to do. Wear their ID. If they're a secondary student, use a clear backpack, and then follow the dress code. And if they're not doing those 3 things, we're committed to addressing those when they occur. Because I go back, it's the term vigilance. It's every day, treating every day like something could happen. So, but I'm going to let Iffy give more detail.
Yes, Dr. Ogletree, dress code was certainly an issue that was discussed amongst the committee, and also our principals provided us a lot of feedback. They all felt like that the code of conduct and the student handbook specifically addresses dress code, and that the students on their respective campuses adhere to those dress code guidelines. We did discuss the issue of the hoodies, the big athletic wears that have the hooded parts to it. And our principals shared that their students do wear, some of those athletic tops with the hoodies, but having the hoods over their heads is something that is not allowed on campus, and they have not had problems with that. So we all decided as a district that the district standard is that students are still allowed to wear those garments that may have hoods on them, but those hoods cannot be worn over their heads while they're on campus.
All right.
And also we also addressed the big coats. Sometimes you call them trench coats, they call them dusters, and those are certainly not allowed, and that's specifically delineated in our handbook too, that those are not allowed on campus.
Okay, thank you. when there is a mental health crisis there on a campus with the student, I don't know who to answer that. At what point will the parent be notified?
Dr. Ogletree, I'd be happy to address that question for you. Currently, when we have a mental health crisis on a campus, we are in direct communication with the student parents. We want to make sure that the students' parents are involved. When we're doing the risk assessments and the threat assessments, we do those, as I had said earlier, our counselors and our psychologists are trained to do those to determine the mild, moderate, or high risk. And then the parent or guardian is called in, and we do an emergency notification conference, and we formulate a plan with that parent to determine what the next step could be. It could be that if it's a mild step, if it's a mild concern, then it might be that the parent is taking their student to the mental health professional that they are already currently working with. And if it's much more serious and the family needs some support, then it might be something like Chief talked about with the emergency detention order. I'd also like to comment and say that we have some plans in place in terms of transitions back into our schools once a student is hospitalized. We have a series of forms, and all of our counselors and psychologists have been trained in how to take and gather information from parents and from students, especially at the secondary level, involving those students in that transition plan and return to campus, because we want to ensure once they come back to campus that campus is a healthy environment for them, that they're not returning to the exact same environment that was causing them to have severe anxiety, severe depression, severe mental health concerns, that we are providing a support in place for them.
Along those lines, so on a returning student, what measures or is there training that you do to make sure that that student is able to enter back into the educational environment without shame and people pointing fingers and that kind of thing? What measures?
Absolutely, that's very important that we engage in confidentiality, and that we only educate and involve people that are on a need-to-know basis in terms of being involved with that student. So those teachers that need to know and have that information in terms of what is going to be healthy and appropriate for that student once they return to the campus. We want to make sure that those teachers are aware, just to the extent that they need to be aware of what's going on with that student and the supports and the plan that's in place, so that everybody's aware of what is going on. If a student needs to access something, if they need to have a place to go to, if they need to have a support during the school day, then we want to make sure that all of those people, again, it goes to communication and relationships. We want to make sure that everybody understands the plan and is a part of it, but only on the basis that they need to know, so that that confidentiality of that student is in place and intact, because that is very important in terms of transitioning back into the school environment.
Okay, thank you. The next question I have deals with lockdowns and notices. So I don't know who answers. Who's that?
Yes, sir.
Would you state on what conditions a lockdown at a school will take place?
So the conditions that require a lockdown on campus, if you have an intruder or threat inside the building, that's the only reason we would lock a campus down. We had some confusion about lockout or secure the building versus that. So lockout is when a threat is outside the building, normally police activity in the community or the area. So the campus will secure the building and continue with business as usual. So education will continue, no disruption of classroom activities at all. But lockdown is only if there's a threat inside the building.
Okay, so outside the building, if there's police activity or something or someone, what do you call that? It's not a lockdown. What do you call it?
It's going to be a lockout.
A lockout.
So
okay.
in that situation, officer or dispatch to the campus, they'll secure the perimeter. Once it's found that everything is safe around the building, the officer will go inside, make contact with the administrator and advise of the situation. And once our officers make contact with the responding agency in the area to make sure the threat has either moved away from the campus or has been taken care of, the campus will stay on secure the building. And once it's determined that it's safe, they'll release it.
Okay, so our communication to parents in our system, if they opt in and all that, will only be for lockdowns. Is that right?
No, sir. Normally what happens after the administrator is advised of what's going on, they're in contact with communications and they draft a response to those parents, whether it be through school messenger or letters home. So, but they're responsible for taking care of that. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So.
Thank you. Going back, I think we need to work on maybe communicating, or maybe I should say teaching our news media, because so often you hear them refer when there is an outside activity, they call it lockdowns.
Right.
And I think that's what tends to maybe upset parents too, because they're not using the proper terminology, and then that alerts people. But because I never heard the word lockout before, so I always have heard it referred to as a lockdown, but that's because I've heard it through the news media.
Well, actually, this is a new program we've implemented this year to clear that confusion we had for previous years. So the information we found on the website under the emergency link or safety link for the district, that's in Spanish, English, and Vietnamese for their Vietnamese-speaking parents and community members, so they can access the information there. So we're going to clear that up with the new process.
Okay, great, thank you. And let me also say, Dr. O, that I forgot to commend our committee for their great work. I guess sometimes, I'm just so accustomed to our staff doing superior work all the time that sometimes I neglect to recognize it and say a special thank you. It's just, it's what I'm accustomed to receiving from our great staff. So thank you for a great job. Well done.
This was tremendous. Thank you all for the time and the energy into it. Our district will be made just a better. We'll be safer. We're going to take a 5-minute break now. Oh, okay. I thought he passed down.
No,
Do you? Okay. All right. We will wait for the break. You have one question? How many?
Generally I never have just one question, Dr. O.
Okay.
But I'll limit myself. Mark, this is really for you. When we rolled out our, I think it was intruder alert program, I had an opportunity to be at one of the high schools during the day when the drill was scheduled. And I chose not to rearrange my schedule to attend, but should the district decide to make that opportunity available to trustees again, I will rearrange my schedule. Thank you.
Mr. Covey, you're the acting presider of this meeting. Dr. O stepped out. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Okay.
That was his last request.
That was his 5-minute break? Well, I think we're through. Should we close it off? I'm not sure where we are. Oh, okay. All right. We'll have a 5-minute break. I can handle it. I know.
Back in session, and we'll go now to review the action items of our agenda. First is 5A. The board will consider approving the tax refunds of $500 or greater for Cypress ISD. 5B, the board will consider approving the minutes of the June 14, 2018 regular meeting. Those are on our consensus agenda. We'll move to the non-consensus action items. 6A, the board will consider awarding bids and contracts and or authorizing purchase orders as recommended in the posted agenda item. 1, Bridgeland High School, CTE, computer lab workstations and monitors. 2, Cypress Ranch High School, marching band uniforms. 3, laboratory specimens. 4, plant and miscellaneous supplies. 5, RFID card printers and software. 6, SIPME.com online video coaching and collaboration platform. 7, Turnitin annual renewal. Turnitin.
Turn it in.
Turn it in.
It looked like Turnitin to me.
We should definitely put it on consent just for that.
Yeah. And by the way, I should have been asking, can we move this to consent? I'm gonna go back to 6A. Can we move that to consensus?
Yes.
Okay. To, well, all of this is the same thing. Okay. Waste 8, waste management services. All right, can we move all that to consensus?
Yes.
All right. 6B, the board would consider approving the agreement for purchase of attendance credits pursuant to Texas Education Code 41 for the 2018-2019 school year. Stuart Snow, brief presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Ogletree, members of the board, and Dr. Henry. We have received official notification from TEA that for fiscal year 2018-19, we will continue to be a Chapter 41 school district. Under the current school finance system, a property poor school district under the Texas Education Code Chapter 42 benefits from property wealthy school districts under Chapter 41 by receiving state recapture funds from Chapter 41 districts that's sent to the state to be distributed to the property poor districts through the equalization formulas. Whether a school district is funded according to Chapter 41 or 42 is determined by the amount of its property value per student in weighted average daily attendance. Chapter 41 school districts are those with property values per WADA greater than or equal to the amount set in statute, which is currently $319,500. This amount is referred to as the equalized wealth level. For 2018-19, CFISD property wealth per student is projected to be $357,702, exceeding the statutory limit of $319,500. The reason why we continue to be considered a Chapter 41 school district is that over the last few years, the rate of our property value growth has exceeded the rate of our student enrollment growth. School districts whose wealth per WADA exceeds the equalized wealth level are required to reduce its wealth per WADA by the amount necessary to bring its wealth per WADA down to the equalized level using one or more of the 5 statutory options that are available in the Texas Education Code, Chapter 41. And those options are listed there. Option 1 is either to consolidate with another school district. Option 2 is to detach property in the school district. Option 3 is to purchase average daily attendance credits from the state. Option 4 is to contract to educate non-resident students from a partner district. And then option 5 is a tax-based consolidation with another school district. Nearly all Chapter 41 school districts in the state have selected option 3 or option 4 or a combination of both. Current statutes provide for 3 equalized wealth levels. Level 1 is currently at $514,000 per WADA, which is equivalent to the yield provided by the basic allotment in the school finance formulas as defined in Texas Education Code Chapter 42. Level 2 allows property wealthy districts to retain tax revenue on the equivalent tax effort raised by the Austin ISD on the first 6 pennies of its tax effort that exceeds the compressed rate of $1. And then option 3 is set in statute at the $319,500 per WADA and applies to any tax effort that exceeds the district's compressed tax rate plus 6 cents. So districts with wealth per student that exceeds the 514,000 equalized wealth level are subject to recapture, meaning that those districts actually write a check to the state to purchase those attendance credits. If these districts whose payments, it's these districts whose payments to the state are distributed to the property poor districts under Chapter 42 under the current school finance system. School districts such as CFISD with wealth per student between $319,500 and $514,000 do not pay recapture unless the district's adopted M&O tax rate exceeds its compressed rate plus 6 cents. Remember that our compressed rate is $1 plus 6 cents, so that would be $1.06. Since we plan to adopt an M&O tax rate of $1.06 for 2018-19, but does not exceed $1.06, the district will not be subject to recapture for 2018-19 and for the foreseeable future, unless in the future we adopt a tax rate greater than $1.06, which then also requires an election of our community for any rate greater than $1.04. However, the district will still be considered a Chapter 41 district, and we will be continued to inform TEA of the Chapter 41 option that we choose, that we intend to exercise in order to reduce our wealth per WADA in the event that our equalized wealth level exceeds $514,000, or that we adopt an M&O tax rate that exceeds $1.06 for 2018-19. So that's a procedural thing that we have to do for TEA, but does not affect us in terms of any recapture or anything like that. Based on our long-term projections of student enrollment, weighted average daily attendance, and our property values, we should not, based on those projections, we should not exceed the equalized wealth level of $514,000 and therefore be subject to recapture until the 2026-27 fiscal year, or unless we hold a tax rate election to increase our M&O tax rate above $1.06 before that. So according to Chapter 41, the district may not adopt a tax rate for 2018-19 until the Commissioner of Education has certified the district's intent selection form that we have to provide them, indicating which option we choose to reduce our equalized wealth level. So let me further clarify, though. Even though we will continue to be considered a Chapter 41 district in 2018-19, it will have no effect on our budget or financial position. The only impact to us is that we must notify TEA of our option selection to reduce our equalized wealth level in the event that we adopt a 2018-19 M&O tax rate greater than $1.06, which we will not be planning to do. So unless our equalized wealth level falls below the $319,500 in any fiscal year, we will continue to have to follow this process each year as we continue to be considered a Chapter 41 school district. So at this time, I recommend that we choose option 3, which is the purchase of average daily attendance credits from the state. And as such, the Board of Trustees is required to approve an agreement for the purchase of attendance credits netting Chapter 42 funding, which is also included in your board book. So we are required to notify TEA of our intended selection by September 1st. So I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? All right. Can we move this to consensus?
John, I would prefer, because of the nature of the vote, that we keep this as a separate vote item.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Item 6C, the board will consider the endorsement of candidacy for Georgianne Rittmeyer, Klein ISD, position 4A, Justine Durant, Spring ISD, position 4A, Steve T. Dennis, Channelview ISD, position 4C, Daniel A. Hopkins, Friendswood ISD, position 4C for the TASB Board of Directors.
Look, okay. Basically, what happens is when somebody wants to run for the state board, and because we are a large district, we get to choose somebody, which gets to be me, to be on the board, and so we have an individual representation. If you don't fall within the large district decision making, then there is an election for the other positions. So this is 4A, and there's 2 people running, and then 4C, and there's 2 people running. My feeling is, and I'm just going to share my feeling because I do not know Justine Durant, but I do know Georgianne Rittmeyer, who's been exceptionally active within not only Klein School District, but the Gulf Coast area, and she has served just on the board at TASB for less than a year. I believe that's right, yeah. And I'm not familiar with Justine Durant. As far as the 4C, I know both Stephen Dennis and it's Tony Hopkins, but his name's Daniel A. Stephen Dennis right now is serving as president of the Gulf Coast Area School Boards, and Tony has only been on the TASB board for 6 months. I think he deserves another chance to be able to serve on that board. So personally speaking, I'm in favor of Georgianne and Tony Hopkins. That's my opinion.
Okay.
I like your opinion.
And we'll take care of that Monday.
Yeah.
All right, 6D, the board will consider approving on first reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. They are C1CAA, local fiscal management goals and objectives, financial ethics. This is a revised. 2, DH local employee standards of conduct. This is a revised. 3, F and G local student rights and responsibilities, student and parent complaints, grievances, revised. And GKA local community relations, conduct on school premises, revised. Can we move that? Okay, question?
On D3 about the students' rights and responsibilities, could we just get a little background on the change for the extracurricular activities?
Sure, I'll go ahead and answer that because it's actually in response to a legislative change from the last session. We actually waited a school year because we didn't want to make that change after the school year had begun, and so we talked about it this summer. We looked at some similar appeal processes, for instance, DAEP placements and other things, and so we modeled the change to the grievance policy after those. The short version is 2 years ago at the last session, the education code changed to say that you could have a different process for review of complaints and concerns regarding extracurricular activities other than the traditional parent complaint process, since it is different. It's extracurricular. It's a privilege. And so we looked at that, got some input, and we've decided to model that, as I said, similar to some of our review processes for discipline at the campus. So have that sponsor, whether it's fine arts or a sport, be the first level of review, and then the campus principal can have a designee look at it, but effectively the campus principal will be the final review of any concern regarding an extracurricular activity.
Okay, all right, thanks. I just wanted, to get the background. And
Sure. Yeah, and
it
is in response to a legislative change. Now, it doesn't include anything that alleges a violation of Chapter 26, the Parental Rights and Responsibilities Act. If it somehow is related to an extracurricular activity, Many districts made this change last year, but we just didn't want to make a change after the handbook and, you know, kind of in the middle of the year. And so that's why we're bringing it before the start of school this year.
All right, thank you.
All right, consensus?
Yes.
6E, the board will consider giving notice to Valerie Clayton that her probationary contract has been terminated. This item will be discussed in closed session.
Yes, this is the second step of that process. If you all have any questions, I'm happy to talk about it because it is a personnel issue. We would go into closed session under the Open Meetings Act, but as you'll recall, you authorized us to give her notice. We did so. She chose not to appeal that decision, and so now this is the second step.
Okay, we'll keep that on for Mondays.
Yes, sir.
Okay. 6F, the board will consider approving the granting of a water meter easement to Lake Forest Utility District for water tap and meter installations at Moore Elementary School, and authorize the superintendent or designee to negotiate the final terms and execute all related documents. Any questions on that? Can we move that to consensus?
Yes.
6G, the board will consider approving the memorandum of understanding between Harris County Juvenile Board and Cypress-Fairbanks ISD to participate in the JJAEP for the coming school year 2018-2019. Any questions of Ms. Obumake? Can we move that to consensus? All right. And I think that's it. That's it for tonight. You'll do your Monday. I think that's it for tonight.
Just
Yes.
a couple of quick comments. Number one, I'm sure the board noticed, but if they haven't, welcome Holly over here.
Hey, Holly.
She's flying solo the first time tonight, so it's been a pleasure to have her serving as superintendent for the board and the superintendent this past month. And then also, I would remind any trustees who are available in the morning, we're going to welcome new teachers and staff at the Berry Center, and that's at 8 o'clock, right?
Yes, sir.
The program will start at 8 o'clock, so if you would like to join us.
Jazz band.